Okay, you guys can all see my screen, or Megan, can you confirm that you're seeing my screen? Fantastic. Again, welcome everyone this evening. I know there's a lot of things we'd probably rather be doing this evening, like maybe watching a hockey game. I'm an Oilers fan, don't hold that against me. We're Canada's team now. But again, thank you for joining us to discuss the Butte Hills East conceptual scheme and land use amendment application. We have a presentation we're going to run through quite quickly here, and want to leave some time, obviously, in our hour and a half to make sure that you guys all get a chance to ask questions, assuming you have them. So you see on the screen here, we do have a number of objectives that we want to do tonight. Of course, introduce the team. And very quickly, there's a number of folks online. I don't think I need to introduce everybody, but we do have the developers and the owners, Cliff Demore and Mohamed Sabah. We have Wayne Poffenroth, who anybody who lives in Butte Hills probably knows of Wayne, and a number of the project team, the engineers, the biologists, all the folks that have helped put the project together, and you'll be able to ask some questions of those folks when we get through. So we're going to talk about the project, what's motivating the owners and the developers. We're going to talk about municipal policy that applies to this project in this part of Rocky View County. We're going to talk about how we've created the concept and what decisions were made to get us to that point, and talk about where we're in process and what we think is going to be happening from this point moving forward. So, and again, an agenda here that I'm going to move quickly through. So again, the project team, again, B&A Planning Group is the lead planning and sort of project manager, of course, with our engagement team, Megan and Martha, that you saw and met. We have traffic engineers. We've got a number of preliminary studies that we did from a geotechnical, environmental site assessment. Of course, we have a civil engineer on file. We have a biologist and a stormwater engineer, and we have a wastewater assessment engineer. That's everybody's done their part and provided input into the process. So from a goal perspective, of course, doing those preliminary studies to make sure we understand the opportunities and constraints on the land as it exists today. We've put a project together based on county adopted municipal policies, the conditions, sort of the opportunities and constraints in the project area, as well as the context of the area surrounding the existing lands. We're assuming some of you folks are neighbors of ours, perhaps to the west or the north or south. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the strategies that we're putting in place to make sure that the project is provided appropriate infrastructure, so transportation, servicing, meaning potable water and wastewater, and stormwater management. And of course, this consultation process is really vital and crucial to our process to make sure we get an understanding of what the neighbors, what the stakeholders think of our project, and we hear if you have concerns or things that you might want to help us improve the project with. So from a context perspective, there's some illustrations just showing the plan area in context with the East Balzac, both the country residential area to the north of Highway 566, of course, the employment area and all of the industrial and commercial developments that are happening south of Highway 66. Of course, there's major transportation corridors, Highway 2, Highway 566, and the area is kind of squished between the city of Verdi to the north and the expanding city of Calgary to the south. There is an area structure plan that's in place. It was adopted in 2001. The Balzac East area structure plan really contemplates a mix of employment uses, again, predominantly south of the Highway 566, predominantly residential or country residential uses to the north. And this sort of funny little sort of weird boundary line is a function or a result of what's called the Calgary Airport vicinity protection area. And these are just some land use restrictions governing the approach and takeoff surfaces of aircraft coming in and leaving the Calgary International Airport. So, moving in just specifically to the residential part of the area structure plan, There is a phasing sequential sort of development program expected. Phase 1 being the lighter yellow, phase 2 being sort of the darker orange, which of course our lands are situated in. And then there's a transitional area kind of expected to sort of be a buffer between agricultural uses further to the east and residential developments in East Balzac. The policies of the area structure plan talk about in the phase 2 area, again, that our lands are located in, there is opportunity to go to minimum 2-acre parcel sizes. And of course, this is when it's immediately adjacent to developments with 2-acre lots, where the lands can be accessed by a country road, a county road that's developed, and there's an available supply of potable water, which of course, those 3 sort of tests have been met by our project area. And the area structure plan requires a conceptual scheme to support any projects contemplating multi-lot subdivision, and really, you know, a process and a body of work to justify and rationalize why the project and how the project can be accommodated with servicing, and sort of integrates well with the pattern of land use and development surrounding the lands. So our plan area is not quite 2 full quarter sections. We have about 318 acres. You see on the screen here, agricultural developments happening predominantly within the quarter sections. There are first parcel outs that have been removed from each of the quarters, each containing dwellings and accessory buildings. Of course, these will be redeveloped if the project is approved. There is a natural gas distribution pipeline. It's a sweet gas pipeline. You see sort of running north-south on the east side of the plan area. There's a meter station associated with that ATCO pipeline. It's been in place, you know, for probably, I guess, 40 years, judging by the plan number. And of course, adjacent country residential to the west and the north of us. So again, about 318 acres is our plan area. We have done a number of technical studies. I mentioned earlier, we did a phase 1 environmental site assessment. We did a preliminary geotechnical investigation to have a look at both the history of existing and past development on and under the lands, just to make sure that there's nothing that could be flagged as a development constraint that would prevent a barrier for country residential development proceeding. And the good news is the results of those 2 studies indicated that there really isn't anything on the lands or under the lands that would pose any significant risk for the project moving forward. So we did a biophysical impact assessments, BIA, as the planners like to use their acronyms. You know, taking a look at topography, taking a look at the existing patterns of surface drainage, water bodies on the lands, the wetlands and the ephemeral drainages. We took a look at the flora and the fauna and anything that happens to be living on the land as it exists today. And really we delineated the wetlands that you see here on the screen. There's, I think, about 10 wetlands. There is a process in Alberta that if wetlands aren't deemed to be environmentally significant, which most of the wetlands on the property are not. There is processes available that allow these areas to be redeveloped, provided that compensation is provided to Alberta environments. And we can talk about that a little later. But we did identify the regional drainage course that you do see features predominantly on the land and through the land. This area is in fact identified as an environmentally significant area. It's in fact going to be claimed by the Crown, the province of Alberta, if the lands are subdivided and the project moves forward. So that's something that we've sort of designed the project around, this regional drainage corridor. So this is our concepts. Again, a comprehensively planned and a coordinated development between the 2 landowners and the 2 developers. Country residential developments in accordance with the area structure plan. We're showing here on this concept about 105 new country residential lots, about 109 lots in total. Of course, there are 4 parcels in the plan area as it exists today. We're thinking country residential district zoning in accordance with the county's land use bylaw, and those minimum parcel sizes would be 0.8 hectares or 1.95 acres. And again, that's a number of the other considerations that will kind of walk you through some of the structure and fundamental design considerations of the project. So featuring sort of front and center, the pipeline. We know that pipeline is not going anywhere. It's serving a use and a benefit regionally. So we're proposing to incorporate and respect that existing pipeline within the rear of the lots that you see facing onto Range Road 292. We would be registering covenants that would restrict building and use encroachments onto that pipeline right-of-way area. Those things would happen at the subdivision stage. So, and again, I mentioned the regional drainage course. You see here that we would be dedicating environmental reserve, or ER, again, as the planners and their acronyms like to use. This would be public lands dedicated at the subdivision stage. The owner, technically, I guess, would be Rocky Butte County, but in fact, it would be held and under the purvey of the province, and in fact, the Queen. But you see here this regional feature really featuring prominently on the landscape of the future development. We know that there has been history of flooding in the north sort of west portion of our plan area, as well as the northeast portion of Butte Hills. One of the things that we are working actually with Rocky Butte County and the Public Works Department to create a solution and help mitigate that existing problem as part of this development project. So you see here public utility lots. This would be 15 meters wide, dedicated at the subdivision stage, effectively to allow a conveyance or a drainage outlet for the ponding and the standing water that does occur in some of those lots, again, to the I guess to the north and east of us, sorry, west of us. From a transportation perspective, we would of course be providing internal subdivision roads. These would be 25-meter road right-of-ways, public right-of-ways that would be constructed initially by the developer, eventually taken over by the county. We would be providing road right-of-way widening. It's kind of hard to see at this scale, but I think it's 3 meters on the north end and 5 meters on the east side. This would allow the range roads and the township roads adjoining our lands to be upgraded and expanded ultimately to 4-lane standard. It's not necessary today, not necessary anytime soon, but we are providing road right-of-way, or would at the subdivision stage. And we know that there's a road right-of-way that effectively could extend Butte Hills Drive west, or sorry, east, and connect with our subdivision. We heard initially and we've heard anecdotally that might not be something that would be favored or encouraged by the existing residents in Butte Hills. So what we're proposing is we can dedicate the road right-of-way, but we wouldn't develop it with a through connection. So this would effectively stay open as a pedestrian access only, to allow people to travel between the projects on foot or by bike, but that would not be a developed road right-of-way. Of course, we did a traffic impact assessments to examine the sort of the impacts that's 105 or 109 country residential lots might have and would have on the surrounding transportation network. You see the East Balzac area north of 566, strong connections with the range roads 292, 293, and 294, the service road. You understand, and something we just learned not too long ago about the province closing this portion of the service road, or range road 294, as part of the construction of the interchange. And definitely that's something I imagine will be of great concern and interest to the residents in Butte Hills. But again, our project and our developments is not expected to go beyond the environmental capacity of the roads and the intersections that surround our lands. There would be a transportation offsite levy that the developer would pay. I believe in this area it's about 5,000 an acre, maybe 6,000 an acre. So in addition to constructing the roads required to give access internally, the developers would be contributing to future impact or sort of future upgrades to the regional roads as required by the county over time. Of course, drainage, we understand drainage being a concern of a lot of folks that live in Butte Hills today. So we did a staged master drainage plan to really make sure that the process of developing our lands wouldn't complicate or wouldn't make drainage conditions of adjoining lands worse. In fact, given the 15-meter PUL or public utility lot, we would in fact be improving some of those drainage considerations. But you do see sort of a schematic of 3 stormwater facilities, 1, 2, and 3, each sort of corresponding to sub-catchments within the plan area by sort of natural topography and the way that the lands drain naturally today. We're going to capitalize and enhance that topography. We won't be wholesale grading this area. You're not going to see a lot of interruption of the drainage patterns that exist on the land as best we can. Mostly the drainage will be directed through the road rights of way to the stormwater management facilities. There may be some grading between lots at a site specific detail, and we can certainly talk about that. But really we're required by county development standards. There's provincial requirements as well as the Nose Creek Watershed Management Plan. We're in a drainage basin that's quite sensitive. We understand that. So these facilities 1, 2, and 3 will be designed to retain surface drainage and release drainage in accordance with release rates that have been pre-established already for us. Potable water, as you all know, the East Balzac area is serviced by the Rocky View Water Co-op. This schematic shows sort of the extent of the existing distribution network. What's interesting is you have sort of a terminal point here and a terminal point here, which really sets up nicely to allow the developers to extend the Rocky View Water Co-op distribution network to effectively create a loop. A loop would, we believe, will improve the level of service and the pumping capacity. I know we've heard, again, anecdotally, that there's some concerns about maybe high time during the summer months, that the pumps and the pressure is less than ideal. So we think that extending the water system into our plan area will, of course, provide a level of service to the new development, as well as improving the level of service for the land surrounding our area. From a wastewater perspective, individual private sewage treatment systems or septic systems in the conventional sense, we show conventionally, the location. So each lot would be provided with its own PSTS or private sewage treatment system at the building permit stage. We understand that 105, 109 new septic fields in this plan area, if not managed properly, could create some concerns. So we did a wastewater assessment report. We looked at the soil conditions and the drainage patterns and the geological profiles underlying the lands, and really the conclusion of that study indicated the lands can sustain PSTS, individual PSTS, as we're proposing. We are obliged to provide what's called packaged treatment plants. Each one of the new homes constructed in this development would effectively have kind of a little mini wastewater treatment plant at the individual lot level, and what's in fact a policy that the county have put together, policy 449. These are in areas like Butte Hills where we're dealing with 50 to 60 parcels per quarter. The county want to really make sure that the quality of the wastewater that leaves the treatment area that goes into the field to be sort of put into the ground to be evaporated is of a significantly higher quality than a conventional septic system. So from a phasing perspective, we're showing phase 1 and phase 1A. It's really, we have 2 owners and 2 developers, each of which, if the project does get approved, will have their own individual aspirations regarding timing for developments. You might see phasing proceed at the same time in both phases. But each developer would be required to extend, the Rocky View Water Co-op as an example. Each developer would be required to construct the drainage facilities and the transportation infrastructure to support the development. So we're thinking 2 phases. There may be 1, there may be multiple phases. We can talk about that. So architectural guidelines, it's not uncommon for developers to create sort of expectations for look and feel and theming of residential development at the policy and land use stage where we're at today. But if in fact the project gets approved, a lot more detail would be put in place at the subdivision stage. But what we're thinking, again, at this still preliminary stage of the planning process, is we're thinking about coordinating the developments within the 2 quarter sections. You drive through this plan area 5, 10, 15 years from now, hopefully you won't see things that don't look like they belong together, in the sense that you'll have footprints, minimum footprints of about 2,000 to 2,500 square feet. Paying careful attention to material finishing and exterior colors. We want to match the landscape that's out there today. Going to encourage natural finishing using materials such as stone, wood siding, and timber. Really looking at an architectural style with varied roof lines, using peaks, gables, dormers, trying to limit the mass of the garage doors in favor of enhancing and pronouncing the access or the main entrance to the house. This is a really good example illustration in the bottom right of the screen. Making sure that we develop dark sky principles. And of course, what that means is we don't want to see a lot of illumination on the outside of the buildings. We don't want to see a lot of upwards illumination of lighting that could cast glare and trespass to adjoining lands. Making sure that everything is really low profile and all the lighting fixtures are cast directly downwards. Limiting manicured, in quotes there, landscaping in favor of using more naturalized, drought-resistant landscaping, given the lack of, a true sort of municipal water supply. We want to preserve the water for the house. We don't want to do a lot of irrigation outside the house. And lastly, just minimizing fencing. This area does have wildlife in it today. We'll continue to have wildlife moving through the area. So really trying to discourage or minimize the amount of fencing in the plan area. So we're almost done here, folks. Bear with me. We're in a process, and we've been at this process actually for quite some time. April 21 is when we really put our team together and started some of the preliminary assessments. We submitted our application, the preliminary application, in fact, July 21. We had an initial internal circulation and a preliminary review just before Christmas. We had comments come back just after Christmas, and we've made some changes, more minor changes really than anything else to our concept. And here we are, sort of spring 2022. This consultation meeting is important. We want to demonstrate and really hear from the community if there are outstanding concerns that maybe we've missed or we haven't thought of. But we're really hoping to have everything back to Rocky View by the administration started by June. Of course, here we are in June in 24 hours. If everything goes well, we're hoping for a public hearing either before the August break. Council at Rocky View, if you're not familiar, they take the month of August off So you won't see public hearings happen during the month of August. We're either going to be public hearing at the end of July or sometime into the fall of 2022. So with that, that's a whole bunch of words and a whole bunch of slides, but definitely, before we take the information or, offer an opportunity for you to ask questions directly, definitely on behalf of the project team, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. And definitely let's hear what you guys think. So I'll turn it back over to you, Megan or Martha, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. We had one question come in during the session as well. We have some comments coming in through the chat. So Ken, if you can see in the chat function there, we had a question come in from Tyler.
Yes.
What is Rockview planning to do to address the current traffic issues coming off Highway 2?
Yeah, good question, Tyler. Thanks for that. I know that the county, if they haven't started, it's going to start this summer. They are twinning Highway 566 from, I believe it's Dwight McClellan Trail, where the mouse is, all the way out to Range Road 290. So there's 3 miles, if my math is right. That's a project that the county is actually funding. I think everybody that lives in Balzac, anybody who experiences Balzac, I live in Calgary, but I quite often head out to Costco, or my kids like to go to the movies out at the mall. It's a busy place. And I think the twinning of the highway with some intersection improvements at 292 and 293, I'm thinking will help alleviate that. As I mentioned earlier, there is a transportation levy that all developers, not only just my clients and the developers of East Butte Hills, anybody else who wants to or plans to develop in the Balzac area generally, pays a levy. And that levy is used to, over time, fund improvements to widening of the range roads and the township roads. As I mentioned, the ultimate configuration of Range Road 292, 293, and I believe Township Road 264, at least to 292 from 294, will be 4 lanes. So all of these roads, a generation from now perhaps, but over time will be widened and will be upgraded using funds generated through new developments and the levies that we're collecting. So I hope that answers the question, and we'll certainly take more as they come in.
Yeah, we are getting comments, and we're getting questions and comments through the chat function as well as the question and answer function. And for all attendees on the line, that's just fine. You can submit your questions anyway. And if you would like to speak, or if you have we can unmute you as well if you prefer. But we do have quite a few questions coming in. While we're on that topic, Ken, we had a question come in. Can you confirm that Range Road 292 expansion would be on the west side of the road?
Great question. Yeah. Again, as I understand, when you have roads like Range Road 292 that have currently, I believe the right of way is 20 meters. It's a statutory road right away. That's when the survey was done in the late 1800s. That's the width of the road right away that was created. When new development comes into an area like this, the county do they call a functional transportation network assessment, where they look at the current roads, the amount of development that's planned over time, and they give a configuration to the roads, including a future right-of-way width. I mentioned 292, the ultimate configuration is 36 meters. So the 20 meters, if you do the math right, the way that the county typically, they do this is, as development comes in, they'll take half of the right-of-way on one side of the road, and when development occurs on the other side of the road, they'll take the remaining right-of-way. So again, if you follow my math, 20 existing, 8 one side, 8 the other side, that gives you ultimately 36 meters. When the additional laning and the ditching to accommodate drainage occurs and what the exact alignment looks like, that's a level of detail that I don't think I'd be able to provide for you, but something, you know, in general terms, the county typically expand roads either side of the current right of way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ken. And do let us know as we answer these questions. You guys can let us know if there's more detail that might be required, or if you have other questions, if there's other questions. I've got the next question, and I'll pass off to Megan. There are a couple of questions about lot availability and what the costs of the 2-acre lots might be. And so don't know who best to send that question to, Ken. Yeah, so will lots be available for purchase by individuals? And what will be the costs of the 2-acre lots?
Yeah, good question. And that would definitely be a question of Cliff and Mohammed as the two owners and developers. I don't know if we're there yet. I don't know if Cliff and Mohammed are there yet, but certainly offline, perhaps we could put these folks directly in touch with either Cliff or Mohammed. I mean, you know, we have a concept here, sort of best case, worst case, you know, if we do get land use approved by, let's say the fall of this year, there would still be a subdivision process that takes about 6-8 months to get through, that would then require detailed design, engineering, and construction. You know, again, moving forward probably into fall of 23, where lots potentially could be able to be subdivided and titles transferred. But I mean, it's a great question. We'd love to hear more questions like that. So I'll just say this is complete joke, facetious, but we're having 50% off one night only for the lots.
Oh no. Yeah.
But we'll definitely, anybody who would want information about potential pricing of lots, let's record that information, Martha, Megan, and we'll get that directly to Cliff and Mohammed, and they can respond offline.
Okay, great. Megan, over to you with a few questions. We've got a lot coming in, so we'll do our best to get to all of them, and hopefully we don't miss any, but we'll get through them as best we can.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep note just so I make sure that nobody gets missed. There's just one in the chat, and then I'll make sure that we move over to all the ones coming through the question and answer. But I see one here. Hi there, is there a mandatory period where you would need to build after buying the house? What could be a potential timeline to be able to buy a lot? And would there be incentive for the existing Butte Hill residents? I know that was also another question.
Great question. And Wayne, I don't know if you're listening, or you're able to respond to perhaps if there might be a mandatory period. I mean, you as one of the developers, or the developer of Butte Hills West, would you anticipate something like that?
To answer that question, no, there is not usually a time frame. As long as the lot is kept neat and tidy, there usually isn't an issue. So quite often the developers would leave, you know, they would not put a timing on when the house would have to be built, if that was the question that was asked.
Yeah, exactly, Wayne. You know, some developers might, you know, just to keep home builders motivated, they may put a timeline, but I think the kicker that I heard, or what I was happy to hear, is, you know, there would be provisions to make sure that if lots are purchased and they are intending to sit vacant for any length of time, they have to be maintained. You know, this is a development that will take some time, you know, assuming it gets approved, to build out. You know, 105, 109 country residential lots. You know, I think the developers would love, you know, 4 to 5 year build out on that. It might take longer than that, depending on market conditions and what happens regionally. So I think it's really important to make sure that the people, especially the early investors and the early builders, the pioneers of Butte Hills East, we want to make sure that your investment is protected, so that you're not going to be living next to a lot that's full of weeds. So thanks, Wayne, for that answer. And thanks for the questions.
Awesome, thank you. So there's another one here. So from Ted, biggest concern for me is the drainage swales and the storm retention pond number 1. Can you tell me what it would look like from above and below ground? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And, you know, it might be a little challenging to show you at this scale. But as I mentioned in the presentation, you know, this drainage or public utility lot, 15 meters wide. So again, we're talking, you know, 50 feet, if my math is right. So, I mean, a significant swale that will be designed and constructed primarily to get the existing flooding that's occurring in this general area through our project down to the regional drainage course and back eventually to the Nose Creek. The question on Storm Pond 1, you know, these are shown schematically at this time. You know, I think I remember seeing some concerns from the initial circulation about, you know, can these things, these facilities be made to look less sort of engineered, using air quotes, and more naturalized. And I think it's something, you know, we've talked about as a project team, trying to use these requirements for infrastructure as amenities. You know, can we create more of a naturalized edge, so that the drainage or the design of these facilities will still serve its primary purpose, and that's to hold water back during peak weather events, and release that water at the predetermined release rates. But I think, and Uver or Karen or anybody else who wants to jump in,
right.
You know, we'd want these things to look nice and be places where people who live in our project, as well as people who might want to visit our project, might want to experience and want to sort of linger around these areas. So, Uver, I don't know.
Yes. So as Ken mentioned, yeah, we're gonna try. The idea is to create naturalized ponds here. So one specific comment I would like to make is, in general, these ponds are they have what we call the active storage of 2 meters, which is the water level fluctuation between the normal water level and the high water level. But for this specific case, we have you know, pre-designed this only for 1 meter or 0.75, between 0.75 and 1 meter. So it's gonna be much shallower than typical ponds. So that's gonna give us an opportunity to put like a more naturalized natural vegetation, and it's gonna look more natural, right? So, and another comment is, yeah, we're gonna, you know, work out at the detailed design stage, the detailed design of the ponds, along with the grading plan for the entire subdivision. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard thanks, Uver, for that. I think I heard in the question, what are the exact elevations going to look like? And Uver just said that we will be doing a grading plan to establish exactly what those elevation changes will look like, and what the specific treatment of landscaping will look like in these areas. Again, I heard Uver say that it'll be less of a lake, if you want to use that term, and it'll be a lake, but less of a permanent water body, more of a landscaped area that, you know, frequently will be provided moisture to keep the landscaping alive. Anybody who wants copies of our technical reports, and that's something, you know, Martha and Megan, perhaps we could make available on the website. We could share the reports if anybody wants to see these. They're certainly not, we don't want to hide anything. It's good information. It's good technical information, and we're proud of the work that was done. So perhaps we could get the stormwater plan to this one fellow that asked the question.
Yep, we absolutely can. We can make sure that project resources and documents are available on the website.
And to that point also too, Ken, just so everyone knows, your comments and questions that are coming in right now, they are going to be documented as part of our engagement summary. So you will be able to see the questions and comments that are being asked in the session, and we will be sharing that summary on the website as well as with Rocky View County.
Thanks, Martha. So just moving along, I just want to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. So I just have two from Nancy here. So, hi, thanks for the opportunity to see the plans. As Rocky View County hasn't updated the Balzac area structure plan in over 25 years, why is the 1.9 acre minimum still in place? 2 acres of lawn is a waste of space/time. Also, where walking pathways, activity areas, as someone who lives east of the development, I really don't want to be entertaining all of the kids with dirt bikes down our road. And I saw another question about pathways, walking pathways. And then also another question, why is the size of house important? 2 questions there.
Great questions. I guess let's talk of the first one first. As I mentioned in the presentation, you're absolutely right, Nancy. The area structure plan is likely past due for a wholesale update. There has been amendments that were put in place from around 2003 to 2009 to expand some of the industrial areas in the southeast, and just recently, very recently actually, the industrial area directly east of the county's municipal campus was approved. Without sort of boring you with all the planning details and the lexicon, the Calgary the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board has recently put in place sort of a master plan for the entire region that does contemplate quite a bit more significant scope and scale of developments in the Balzac area, both east and west. But those plans are likely not going to be realized or even started by Rocky View in partnership with Airdrie and Calgary for quite some time. And what I mean by that is probably 2 to 3 years at the very earliest. There is a plan, as you're probably well aware, in West Balzac for much more significant scale and density of residential developments. In fact, Melcor was recently approved with the Rocky Creek conceptual scheme. I think there's about 1,500 residential units, sort of near urban scale development. Rocky View Council recently extended the water wastewater system that services the Balzac employment area under the highway to service that area. But this area, this part of East Balzac and the country residential sort of nature and flavor of this area, I really don't know if the county wants to sort of disrupt that in the sense of, putting in big pipes to service, more urban scale development. I think would really take away, this is my opinion only, certainly from the quiet sort of country residential nature of what's out there today. So the developer, really, acknowledging the plan is 20 years old, but it is the plan. It is the statutory plan that's in place, and it is the benchmark to which new developments are to be evaluated against and have to adhere to from a policy perspective. So that's why, when we look at the 2 acre parcel size and really the character and the nature of the plan that we're proposing, if I can find it here, we really tried to respect and honor sort of the grid, the structure of the country residential community as it exists today. We didn't want to introduce a form of development that would really be a marked contrast with what's out there today. But again, the open space with the regional drainage course and more sort of master planned or permanent drainage facilities at this scale, we think are going to be improvements for the area as it exists today, as well as our project. So lots of words there. I hope I answered the question. Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. Sorry, I'm just moving on to other questions here. Regarding the architectural guidelines, many of the neighbors' acreages have been in existence for many years and are not that large and often bungalows. What will be done to ensure these are not left in the shadows and property values negatively impacted? Also, what is the potential for this to become a gated community? They did say this would never happen to Sharp Hills, but as of next week, it will be gated and unavailable to many of the Rocky View County residents paying taxes in the area. I know much of this country is a mess, and that you are stepping into here. And then, sorry, just another question. I'm just answering questions all from the same people, just so that they're all answered at once. Has the RV Water Co-op confirmed that all 109 lots can be serviced with zero impact to the current members?
Yeah,
sorry,
you might,
just 3 there.
you might have to prompt me and try to remember all those questions.
Yeah, sure thing. Maybe I can do one question at a time.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we can start with the first one, the architectural guidelines.
Yeah, well, the architectural guidelines, and again, at this scale, and keep in mind, these are 2-acre lots. These are substantial lots in the urban sense. You know, getting to be smaller lots from a country residential sense, but you still have requirements for 15-meter minimum yard setbacks. So again, that's 50 feet. From let's just pick a lot here. This lot 42 would have to respect 15 meters from the front, 15 meters from the side, and 15 meters from the other side. So I don't really think that there's any real risk of the McMansion next door overshadowing or completely dominating the scale of existing developments, because those zoning requirements are in fact regulated by the county, not by the developer. These architectural controls or the guidelines that we're talking about, these are put in place typically by a developer. He or she will put covenants on the title to advise future owners of their obligations, but they're not meant to take away from existing community, or try to force others to comply. I think it's more intended to put a benchmark in terms of wanting to have colors, for example, that are ambient, high quality finishing, and just the architectural style. We don't want every house to look the same, but we do want things to look attractive and like they belong in those areas. This minimum building footprints, I think is just a number that from a ranch and a bungalow perspective, I think we don't necessarily want to have houses that are too small and look out of place on a 2-acre lot, but there could be larger homes and likely would be larger homes, but again, within that footprint of again, the 15-meter yard requirements that I talked about. The question on access and the gated community, I'll throw it out to Cliff or Mohammed or Wayne. I don't believe there's any intention of trying to gate this community. When you look at the transportation network, we've got 5 or 6 access points into the project area from the regional transportation network. I don't think we have any intention of gating any of these roads. You do note that some of the roads have cul-de-sacs. And again, this is an intentional design imperative where we could have connected these roads, but we wanted to create some seclusion, some privacy, and more or less discourage people who may be looking to come into residential areas like this for reasons that maybe they shouldn't be. But really trying to make sure that the road network is connected within and external to the project area. I think I heard a question about pathways. In fact, we very early on in our concept, we were anticipating the need or the ask from Rocky View County that we were to put pathways on the north and the east boundary of our project area, public pathways within municipal reserves. In fact, the county told us they don't want them. So they directed us to remove those pathways from the project. They didn't want us to include those. I guess we were a little surprised, but at the same time, you know, when you have country residential areas with 25-meter road rights of way, you have ditching either side of the paved surface. We're still expecting people to be able to walk through and in the community, and really this connection right here, I think is front and center in our strategy to making sure that the folks that live in Butte Hills today are definitely going to be able to, in addition to this drainage swale, be able to get from the community as it exists today through into our project area and perhaps down into the regional open space and the drainage area in the south portion of the plan area. So remind me, Megan, of what I haven't answered. Sorry.
Yeah, we had one question come in through the chat function, Ken, so I'll just bounce out of the Q&A function for a minute. You'll see it there. There's existing development within Butte Hills East that is currently being used for storage and old equipment. How would that be dealt with? And is there a plan to buy from those residents or make those standard lots, or would it stay as is? Can you picture the area that they're referring to?
Yeah, good question. I mean, if I'm understanding, would this be storage that might not be approved and is just occurring on residential lots? Because if that's the case, my suggestion would be to contact the bylaw folks at Rocky View. You know, we have residential land use predominant. We have no intention of putting in business or industrial storage into this community. Certainly we don't want that in our area. If it's occurring within the community as it exists today, we don't want that either, right? So, you know, I think if in fact it is uses that are occurring that don't have permits or are against bylaw, definitely you want to contact the county and get them to look at that.
Okay, thanks. We have one more question. Are there any plans for fiber optics or cable services? And if so, will services be underground? Yeah, again, another good question. And Wayne, I might pitch this question to you. Certainly what we call franchise utilities. Franchise utilities are commonly a term used to capture electricity, telecommunications, both phone and cable, and any other infrastructure needed to support the developments. Normally, when you design a project of this scale, the county will insist you work with the franchise utility operators and dedicate easements adjacent to the municipal road rights of way. And those easements are usually the ones that contain the power, the telecommunication, the natural gas infrastructure. In terms of fiber optic, Wayne, I don't know if you can answer that question. I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, I can maybe answer that. It would be very likely that there would be fiber optics put in the same trench. Usually it goes in the same trench as the power and the gas. So it's called a third party trench. And so that's a very good possibility that would be installed by the developers. It's something that everyone likes and is quite normal to go into a country residential subdivision. So I would expect it would happen in this development also. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. We have more questions coming in, which is great. I'm just doing a little housekeeping time check. We're coming up to 7 o'clock. We do have this session until 7:30, so there's still time to get your questions in if you have any. A couple clarifying questions to the architectural guidelines, Ken, that came in. Can you clarify, will there be a maximum square footage for the homes?
Yeah, another good question. Again, I might pitch that to either Wayne or Cliff or Mohammed. But I do know that if you have a 2-acre lot, your what we call the building envelope, or the area, the portion of the 2-acre lot that you can actually build your home on is actually quite restricted. And I say that because you have the 15-meter yard requirements that I mentioned earlier, plus in these types of subdivisions where you don't have a connection to the municipal wastewater system, you have to leave space within your 2-acre footprint for your septic field, your private sewage treatment system, so that your 2-acre lot rapidly shrinks in terms of being able to accommodate a maximum house size. But Wayne, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, again, just getting back to country residential, what is standard with most developers in a country residential is there's usually not a maximum ever put on, but there is a minimum. And just throwing out rough numbers, it's usually a minimum for a 2-story is around 15 to 1,700 square feet minimum. That's not a very big home. And about 1,400 square feet minimum for a bungalow. Again, that's very, very minimal. Most houses in Butte Hills to the west there, when those were done, they're around, a lot of the bungalows were around 18 to 2,000 square feet, and a lot of the 2-stories about the same. So I would imagine the developers, the owners of these developments would probably put a minimum on, but not a maximum for the square footage, if that helps at all.
Thanks, Wayne.
No, that's great. And then while we're on the architectural guidelines, I think we have a question from an interested purchaser. They said, I have dogs. Can I put a fence around my property?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I mentioned in the presentation, a 2-acre lot to completely ring that space with a fence, I mean, that's a significant undertaking. Maybe there's opportunities to look at dog runs or portions of the lots that end up being enclosed, so you can have your dog and let them run and get exercise as they need to. But I think overall, to allow the wildlife to move through the project, I would say again, and there's general language that talks about fencing being minimized. Again, maybe Wayne, if you have any anecdotal experience in some of your other projects, have you seen people fencing their entire lot, country residential lots?
Yeah, to answer that, I did do a development in Bearspaw, it was 60 lots, and that issue did come up. We did have in our architectural controls that there was no fencing allowed, excuse me, of the whole lot, like the whole 2 acres, but we did allow smaller fencing for dogs. So there was like a portion around the house. And what we did in our architectural controls, we had black chain link fence. And so that actually looks quite nice. It doesn't, with the wood product, over years, it doesn't look the best. So that seemed to go over well with the rest of the residents. So again, I can't speak for Cliff and Mohammed, but I wouldn't think that, they would want to see these lots fenced off, the whole lots. It doesn't look good. And so, yeah, I guess that's something that they can decide how they want to deal with it, but that's my thoughts.
Okay. Thanks, Wayne. Ken, a question about water servicing that has come up. Has the Rocky View Water Co-op confirmed all 109 lots can be serviced with zero impact to current members?
Good question. In Rocky View's planning process, you have to you have to understand we're moving from policy to land use to subdivision. And at each one of these processes, the level of technical requirements and the level of certainty increases. So again, we're talking at this stage about conceptual scheme, which is a policy, and perhaps land use, which is the zoning of the land. We're not talking subdivision, again, at this stage. But we have reached out to the general manager of the Rocky View Water Co-op. We indicated our plans and our desire to create the 109 lots. We were told that the system has capacity and they're interested in working with us to eventually, if council approves the project, to eventually accommodate the servicing. But as we show here, will we be able to guarantee that the service will be improved? They always say, what is it? No such thing as certainties except death and taxes. But I can tell you that when we can make a connection of this system and basically create a loop where currently there's service that just ends in either one of these long reaches, your service is I think as close to being guaranteed to improve as we can at this stage. I don't think the co-op has any interest in allowing and supporting a development that would erode the service to its current customers. So I think, long story short, we expect definitely that the service would improve because of the loop connection. And we have no intention, our developers don't have any intention of providing a substandard potable water service for our customers.
Thanks, Ken. Awesome. So we just have another question here about stormwater. So it just says, since living here since 1999, we have seen and watched our neighbors struggle with flooding, constant pumps being replaced, and finally neighbors giving up and moving on. 2013 they mentioned. So yeah, I just was wondering if you could speak a little to that, just having like massive amounts of rain, what guarantees are being made to protect current owners that will have concerns with current ponds being replaced?
Yeah, again, a great question. I think fundamental to one of the preliminary or the basic design imperatives, when we went through the presentation showing this drainage swale, this 15-meter public utility lot, this really doesn't serve necessarily Butte Hills East any primary or direct benefits. I think that this is a piece of infrastructure that I know Rocky View has been wanting from the developers and the owners of this site. So we've been working with them. Initially, I think I remember seeing a plan that had a swale sort of coming across the quarter section, which wouldn't help agricultural uses continuing in the land, but certainly this more sort of I guess structured or direct conveyance opportunity, I think we're accommodating in our design specifically to help address and mitigate some of those ongoing flooding concerns that you've spoken of. The stormwater facilities that happen to be sort of integrated with that 15-meter drainage conveyance, I think we've taken advantage of that and trying to put a comprehensive and a cohesive plan together that helps the flooding and improves the situation within our neighbors' lands, and B, takes care of the drainage that our project will be creating, the surface drainage with the roads, with the roofs, with the paved surfaces within each one of these lots. Every one of these stormwater facilities that Uver and his team have designed are going to be specifically in place to mitigate drainage issues within our footprint. So
right,
we don't want. Go ahead.
No, I just want to add that in addition to the ponds, we are also designing what we call the low impact developments development features at each lot. So that's gonna, help reducing the amount of runoff generating at each lot. So that's another, and that's that's also in our report. So
that's a good point. For folks who may not know what low impact development is, that's sort of the concept of creating conditions primarily through landscaping on each lot that are specifically designed to hold back water, so that when the rain hits the roofs, goes down the downspouts, we don't want the water to just shed off the property into the ditches. We want to hold back. And I mentioned in the landscaping and some of the architectural guidelines, wanting to make sure that we're using drought resistance or natural landscaping wherever we can. This helps act like sponges, so that water stays on our footprints of each lot before it hits the ditches, before it eventually gets into the drainage ponds and backs up before it gets released off site. So that's a good point, Uber, we're looking at the regional scale, we're looking at the project area, and we're also looking at each lot. In fact, will be a drainage plan prepared when each house gets constructed, to make sure that we're not creating conditions lot by lot that take away from some of those design fundamental imperatives that we have.
That's right.
Thanks, Ken. Awesome. So there's just another question here. Are garden suites and secondary residences going to be allowed as they're right now through Rocky View bylaws? How many outbuildings will be allowed on each? How many buildings will be allowed on each parcel? Sorry.
Good question. I guess the first answer is accessory dwelling units or garden suites, secondary suites are actually permitted in all of Rocky View County's residential and agricultural land use districts. So the fact that we're proposing the country residential district on our property as a discretionary use, that opportunity would exist for each one of these potential owners and purchasers of one of these lots in our footprint. That said, they would have to go through a development permit process. In Rocky View County, single family dwellings are typically dealt with as deemed approval. So you don't need a development permit for a dwelling, but you do need a development permit for an accessory building, meaning like a detached garage, or one of these secondary suites or accessory dwelling units. So there are very strict, as I understand, strict guidelines and land use prescriptions that are in place that the county's development authority would address. But we're not thinking at this stage that individual lot owners would either have to put in these uses or not put in these uses, if that makes sense. The number of accessory dwelling units, the number of accessory buildings, I think that was a question. That typically gets down to a function of the available space within the building envelope or the available development footprints in each lot, maintaining side yards, front yards, rear yards, the footprints of the house, the septic fields. I don't know, and Wayne, maybe you can comment. I don't know if we'll specify, a maximum number of accessory buildings, but I think a couple for sure. Maybe one landowner might decide to not have any. I think it would come down to the development permit process and each one of these lot owners' individual aspirations.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I could just add a bit to that, if that's okay. Regarding the outbuildings, Rocky View does have pretty strict guidelines on how many outbuildings, and also I would think Cliff and Mohammed, developers, will put restrictions on that the outbuildings need to match the house. So again, that's part of the the direct control / architectural controls that would be put on, so you don't have mismatch or outbuildings that don't suit. So that wouldn't suit the lot or the house that's being built. So, but again, Rocky Butte County does have pretty strict guidelines on how many outbuildings you can have. So I don't think that will become an issue.
Yeah, that's a good point, Wayne. There are the maximum building heights and yard requirements for accessory buildings are definitely tightly regulated, and I appreciate the comments on architectural style and sort of the intention or the desire to see these buildings tie together from a design perspective. You don't necessarily want to have a house that looks nice and then sort of a metal clad building maybe that doesn't suit the style or the color or the ambient character. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Just another question, just looking for a little bit of clarification. So this swale will look like an open ditch, similar to the open ditches that are in front of our houses that run parallel to the street. That is approximately 50 feet wide and runs completely from north to south. Will it be lined with stone, grass? The person asking the question is just trying to get a good grasp of what it will look like.
Yeah, great question. Obviously a significant feature on the landscape that if not detailed sensitively and adequately could create an eyesore for the developments. And I think all I can say at this stage is we would definitely, if the project gets approved, this would be a project in partnership with Rocky Butte County. So we would have to do a detailed design of this piece of infrastructure to ensure that it's going to provide the utility amenity that it's designed to serve, and that's to get the drainage out of the area. But I guess from a self-serving perspective, we want to make sure that we're not creating an eyesore for our future lot owners, in addition to creating conditions that would be unsightly for the existing owners out there. So, I think we'll sit down, assuming the project gets approved at subdivision stage. We will be putting our engineers and our landscape architects pen to paper and make sure we design something that's going to look nice, but it's also going to function nice as well.
Thank you. So I don't have any other questions in the chat or in the question and answer section right now. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to speak to ask your question, or feel free to just type, and yeah, we still have a little bit of extra time here.
Megan, did you want to go over some of the survey feedback form details as well as the website?
Yeah, I'll just post it in the chat here. So there's a feedback survey. It'll also go out in an email tomorrow, as well as the presentation and a recording of this session will go up on the project website, and I just added a link to both of those in the chat here. So yeah, hopefully that if there's any other questions, yeah, just let us know, and if not, the information will be there to revisit later. And you can also contact myself or Martha or Ken if any questions come up later. We hope that all the questions are answered.
Yeah, it's been great tonight. We've had a little over 10 attendees. So thank you everyone for your time. And we've received over 20 questions tonight that we've responded to so far. Oh, I do see a hand has gone up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna unmute.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Hi,
so Jim Cox, yes, I've been here since '99. That was one of my questions you did read about the storm water. I think I'm one of the last existing people that live against the west part of your new development there, but I really am still trying to get my head wrapped around how you're going to move the water. If you go back to slide 10, I believe, right there, that the pond up in the middle of the north end, yes, where you have your cursor there. Okay, 2013, with 150 millimeters of rain that come down, was at the back of our berms. Literally at the back of our berms. These are not 100-year storms anymore. They're, who knows, 20-year storms, 10-year storms, unknown at this point with weather, climate change going on rapidly, shall we say. My question is, I guess, that is quite a deep hole, or quite a deep low-lying hole, if that's what we want to say, with probably has a, I don't know, a 30-foot rise from the center of that hole up to the back of our berms, completely filled up with water. I don't think your little pond or your storm pond that you're developing that is against mine is going to hold all that water or move it fast enough. My intentions are here is to save flooding onto my property now, which was never there before, with moving the pond onto the back of mine. Very, very poor design as far as I'm concerned. Why is there no intentions to use the existing pond as a storm pond and go from there? Now, the other thing I have a concern with all that water there, and it's going to be pumped in there, my field backs onto that as well. So what's that going to do to my septic field is what it comes down to when those heavy rains come. 50 millimeters of rain could cause that pond to fill up just by the runoff itself. Now, pond is dry today. We've had drought conditions. We know that. But again, in 2013, it was full, and I mean, it was full. Every neighbor was back there taking pictures just in case it came over for insurance purposes. I really don't get my head wrapped around what this is going to do or how you're raising or moving that water. And Poppenroff's on the line here. I know he is. He did the other developments here, and they had water problems there even after the developments were done. I don't want to see that happen again. Something you guys really need to get your heads wrapped around and design differently, I think. And I'm just putting my 2 cents in here on what I see and what I know.
Yeah, no, and Jim and Allison, thank you for the comments. So, you know, I'll maybe from a planner layman's term, you know, take a crack at responding, and maybe let Uver and Wayne and other experts kind of weigh in. I know that you know, an area, for example, like if you're familiar with Janet in Rocky View County, where there isn't a designated outlet for regional stormwater conveyance. And the area is quite flat in relative terms. There's not a lot of, you know, significant grade changes. In peak precipitation events, you see ponds out in that area fill up, and they look like they're ginormous, and they are, but they're not very deep. And you know this area far better than I, so you know it's a grain of salt with what I'm going to say, but you know, in a peak precipitation event, when you don't have a discharge, it doesn't take long for a big area to become inundated and can potentially cause big problems, you know, when you have a country residential community right next door to it. So I think that by virtue of just providing this outlet for the area, I think in large part will mitigate the concern. I do know, and you comment here, as part of the licensing requirements with Alberta Environment, so the province of Alberta, when a development is planned, you can't change pre and post development conditions. Meaning, if there's water coming onto a piece of land from an adjoining piece of land, you can't stop that. You have to accommodate it coming through your project as part of the stormwater drainage concept for a new development like this. So by law, we cannot, you know, regardless of what the concept ends up looking like, we cannot make conditions on your land worse. By default, we can only make things better. This drainage swale that we were talking about here, and again, we're working with Rocky View County, the Public Works or the Capital Works Department. Angie Yurkowski is the gal that maybe you know, or you've spoken to Angie. They want this, they want to see this because they see it as a potential partnership where a new development can integrate a piece of infrastructure like this that can improve conditions. The fact that we're putting the pond here instead of back where that wetland is. Keep in mind, and Karen, if you're on the line, you can maybe comment. This is an area that's shown that has unique wildlife or unique vegetation that's been delineated to demonstrate that there is water that sits, collects in these areas, sometimes seasonally, other areas more frequently. But we are thinking we are going to be able to, with the proper approvals from the province, to effectively call it fill it in or disturb this delineated wetland, with the understanding that our stormwater concept, which has to be approved by Rocky View and Alberta Environment as well, to make sure that we're not creating conditions either within our site or adjacent to our site to exacerbate flooding conditions. So with that, I don't know, Yuver or anybody else want to round that?
Yeah, just to add again, and thanks for the comment, Jim. Yeah, so basically with this pond, yeah, we're gonna, based on the plan view, we are going to use, you can see like a reduction in the total wet area, right? Like that's the apparent view you have there. But as I mentioned before, at each slot level, we are going to have another LID feature, which is going to have some volume, storage volume there as well. So somehow we are replacing, that big wetland with a small storages at each slot level. So that's gonna, help. Again, we're gonna, detail design, we're gonna, do our analysis and just to make sure that the grading combined with these local features and the large storm ponds are gonna basically replace the current wetlands, right? Kind of.
So yeah, obviously, I don't think we can respond and address the entire question, Jim. But I think what we can do at this stage is definitely you can have a look at the stormwater management report. Again, to review it yourself, or have somebody look at it, because it is a technical document. But I can assure that we have to improve conditions. We can't make things worse for you and your septic field that you mentioned. Barry, did you want to comment on separation distances between septic systems and drainage facilities like this?
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. There is, within the Alberta Private Sewage System Standard of Practice, there is setbacks for a variety of things on your own lot and from others, for that matter. So there's a setback where your tank, for example, has to be so many meters away from your house and so many meters away from your property line, and so forth and so on. And there are setbacks as well to regional drainage facilities, water sources, water courses, things like water wells, for example. And all those, need to be looked at in detail. And as Ken was talking about with the building envelope, once we describe or determine where that envelope is, and then the low impact development things that go along with that, fitting all these things in. So it's a long, I'm going to use the word planning process here, even though I'm an engineer. I'm going to use planning process. When we put all these together and when we looked at, being able to service with the individual on-site systems, there was a lot of this that we looked at with respect to on-site stormwater facilities, building envelopes, vegetation, low impact development, and so forth and so on, when we cited these things to make sure we were cognizant that we weren't creating any issues for any other adjacent property and still respecting all of the regulatory setbacks and so forth that we have to.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
I think there was something else I put in my first question that I did on the Q&A. I can't remember what it is at this time. Hang on a sec. I know we only got a couple of minutes left here. And I think you actually answered it, because I put in there what guarantees are being made to protect the current owner that will have concerns with the current ponds being replaced. So by law, as you said, or by development plans or so on and so forth, you cannot make it worse, I guess, is the answer to that question.
Yeah, in fact, Jim, there's a license that you get from Alberta Environment to operate a stormwater facility or stormwater system like this. So, you know, and certainly not to say that once you get that license, there can never ever be an issue that can arise. But you know, the obligation at the onset is to make the conditions better or leave them the same. And if things happen after the fact, you know, there is, I can tell you again, without going into too much detail, when a project like this gets approved and a developer has to build infrastructure, whether it be roads, stormwater, utility servicing, the infrastructure, first of all, needs to be designed and approved by all the regulatory authorities having a say on it. Then it has to be constructed by an engineer with engineering or contractors with engineering oversight. Then the project needs to be inspected with all the infrastructure. The county and their engineers inspect all the infrastructure before it's accepted as sort of the county's infrastructure. And even after that occurs, there's a 2-year, call it a warranty period, within which anything that happens to be substandard, a design that isn't working the way it should, or there's been a failure in some way, shape, or form, the developer is on the hook. And in fact, they need to post securities that the county holds through that whole 2-year process to make sure that there's a kitty, or available pot of money to fund improvements should they be required. So there's quite a lengthy, robust process to protect folks like yourself in instances like this. So.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Okay, just as we're now at 7:30, if there's no more questions at this time, I believe we're able to wrap. I just want to thank everybody for their questions, their comments, their time. Thank you, Ken, for the presentation. And just as I said, we'll be uploading it to the project website, like I shared in the chat. And then a follow-up email will just be going out to everybody with the survey, and then sharing the link to the project website with a recording of this information session and then the presentation. And yeah, feel free to reach out to myself, Martha, Ken. I'll just drop my email and I can ensure that if I can't answer your question, I'll make sure that your question gets to the right person. And Ken, I'll pass it along to you if you have any final comments.
No, again, thanks everyone for spending the evening with us. I threw my email in the chat as well. By all means, if anybody has questions you didn't understand, or you didn't feel like you got the information you were looking for, we're all ears. You know, we definitely want to make sure that you guys get all the information, you understand what's being proposed, and you know, by the time we're ready to get in front of council at a public hearing, if you're still interested, you can come out and speak to council at that time. But yeah, thanks for joining us this evening, and hope you have a good rest of your evening. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
You guys.